Good morning and welcome back to the FEO 21 Virtual Summit and Tuesday Talks with FEO. Again, I'm Debbie Mann and your host for this hour, and a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already done so, it looks like everybody's muted themselves, so that's great. Thank you very much. And when you have questions, please, put them in the chat and I will ask Charlie them as we go through this process. So I'm thrilled to be talking to Charlie. I've already been talking to Charlie for about 15 minutes now. And thank you, Charlie, for being our guest here at Tuesday Talks. Charlie is the CEO of the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair, and he's going to continue sharing his knowledge with us that he's been so generously started with for the last few minutes. So welcome, Charlie.
Thanks for having me, Debbie. My pleasure to be here.
So great. Loving that we have you here in the iconic, representing the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair. One of the fairs, like I was saying earlier, I love going to. So you're the CEO there, and it's almost 100 years old. There's a lot of moving parts in the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair, lots of different places you can go and see. How do you and your team keep it updated, fresh, modern, and ready for people who come every year or the newcomer?
Well, and I think that's the balance that we have, is we have people that come to the Royal and have come, frankly, in some cases for generations. In 2016, I was walking through the barns and somebody was holding a baby, and they knew who I was and said, can you hold my baby so we can take a picture of you? And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know why I'm doing this, but they explained to me that that baby was the 4th generation in their family that has been at the Royal.
Wow.
It's a big deal for them. This was their first Royal, but they had been here for generations. And so, I mean, you kind of go, wow, that's amazing that we have that history and heritage with some people. So they see it in one way. Of course, our job is to expand the reach and get more people in. So some people haven't even heard about it. We've got new generations of people from around the world moving to Canada, haven't heard of the Royal, have no history with it. But it really kind of came down from my standpoint. I joined the Royal in 2015, having been with the CEO of the Honda Indy for the previous 10 years. And I think, as I was explaining earlier, I don't have a background in agriculture, didn't have a background in equine sport, grew up in downtown Toronto. So as I was going through the search process, kind of kept making that clear to the board that, those core elements, I don't speak goat, I don't speak horse, I don't speak giant vegetable, but we've got other people that do. But one of the things that we're able to, and I think is important for all of us, is really to put the emphasis on focus. And I think there's many festivals and events that strive to offer something for everybody, and they create a broad appeal, and they hope people show up. And often people do show up because they just want to have fun. But I think as organizers, we really should be asking ourselves if we are really providing an environment that creates value for the experience of attending our events, or are we just trying to survive from one year to the next? And certainly this year has proven a lot of us have no option but just to try to survive. But from the Royal's perspective, in order to keep the Royal fresh, modern, and appealing kind of year after year, we now really focus our efforts on our core values that brought us into being 100 years ago. Perhaps more than any time in our recent history, the relevance of food and agriculture is a primary concern for consumers. And that's exacerbated by the pandemic. Consumers are expressing significant interest in food sustainability, food security, health, and wellness. I mean, at the Royal, we've been telling the farm to table story for 100 years. But frankly, though, like many events and festivals, in order to make ends meet, we too were chasing dollars. while simultaneously trying to cut costs years ago. And I think that's a recipe for disaster. When I joined the Royal in 2015, I'm walking the commercial floor, and literally I could buy a black velour Elvis t-shirt. Now, said earlier, I don't have a background in agriculture or equine sport, but I couldn't figure out why we're selling black velour Elvis t-shirts on site. And clearly what it was is we had somebody responsible for selling X amount of booth space to commercial exhibitors on site. Somebody was prepared to write us a check. We accepted the check. And they were terrified afterwards when we went through the list. And I said, nope, they're not coming back. They're not coming back. They're not coming back. I mean, we literally did not renew 40% of our exhibitors after that first year because they weren't on brand and they weren't in scope. And that was terrifying. Even the board was terrified, going, yeah, but that's revenue. I said, well, then we need to make it up on revenue that's on, excuse me, on brand and in scope. Okay, we need to sell. We just can't go to the same people just because they're prepared to write us a check. That same year, or for the following year, we had the highest renewal rate we ever had, because the people that wanted to come, that were on brand, that had always were debating, am I coming back or not? Once we told them that we got rid of the Elvis guy, we got rid of the furniture guy, we got rid of, you know, the water hot tub guys that you see at a bunch of other places, that generated the highest renewal rate. So we were very pleased with that kind of, you know, positioning, that we have to be focused on what we do. We need to stand up and pound our chest on our soapbox and be that farm to table guys. We often joke, and I hope nobody from the C&E is here. We'll let the guys at the C&E, they can own the deep fried Mars bar space. That's not the Royal. The Royal is going to be about best in class. You know, we're telling our stories about the farm, the animals, the producers, local food, agri-food, agritourism, education, and world-class competitions. That's where we're narrowing our focus. But those are the same mandates that brought us into being 100 years ago. We're now just getting back to doing that. We need to continue to make competing at the Royal meaningful. I mean, we have over 200 different competitions, and those that are in the industry understand that winning at the Royal has a direct benefit to your bottom line for your business. I mean, that could be in any of the livestock categories. If you win the grand champion in the dairy category, for example, which again, I didn't even understand that there were dairy competitions, but we have an event, and we would be ranked number 2 or 3 in the world in terms of a dairy show. I didn't know what a dairy show was. The Coca-Cola Coliseum holds 7,500 people, and we have our dairy show in there for the grand champion dairy. It runs all day. By the end of the day, when we get down to the top 10, there are about 2,500 guests from around the world that are in to see who's in the top 10. And by the time we narrow it down to the end of the day, where we declare the grand champion at the Royal Dairy Show, there's about 6,000 people in that building.
Wow.
Literally watching cows go round and round. I mean, I was there my first year. We had our CEO, who's our chairman of our board, and I was there. We had Princess Sophie, Prince Andrew's wife. And I said, okay, can you guys both explain to me what we're watching here? Because I'm looking at that one and it looks like a cow, and that one looks like a cow, and that one looks like, I had no idea. But it really is about this, it's all about genetics. And those animals are then, their genetics are sold around the world. And
wow.
It's us, and Switzerland has Swiss Expo, which is one of the biggest dairy shows in the world. And there's one in Wisconsin. The 3 of us would be the biggest shows in the world. There are millions of dollars that trade hands. So, if you win that competition, your farm just went up in stature and you're making millions of dollars on the genetics. So it's a big deal. So we're taking those elements of competing at the Royal, and that could be competing in jams, jellies, butter tarts, hot sauce, maple syrup, and really making sure that when you compete at the Royal and you win at the Royal in any of those competitions, it actually has big meaning for you. It would be, an example of not doing well. We used to have a wine competition, and it goes back to the Jack Welch, the former CEO of General Electric, when he said, if we're not going to be number one or number two in the category, why are we in this category? And we had a wine competition, but we were getting slop from producers and some people that were just starting out, but nobody was really, any of the big guys or even the key craft people, they weren't really participating. It became clear to us that we weren't having relevance in the industry. We weren't important to them. We weren't helping them drive their business. So why are we having a wine competition if we're not helping the industry? So we stopped doing a wine competition. But if we have a butter tart competition, I mean, literally, it's a big deal, and it's delicious. And even the giant vegetable competition, it's for those that are in that industry, it's a big deal. I mean, we're the Super Bowl for any of those 200 competitions, and so it's really building that best-in-class culture. That's what we're standing for. A quick side note on the giant vegetable. A few years ago, there was a big uproar because in the middle of the night, the giant pumpkin, somebody had carved a hole in the giant pumpkin to steal the seeds for next year. Like yeah, it's a big deal. So, that becomes, going back to focus, is, we need to be best in class and deliver against that expectation, because that's what our core constituents are expecting. And to do that, we've built world-class, best-in-class show rings. I mean, we invest significantly in the sound, lights, and production of those facilities. We secure the best judges from literally around the world to come to the show. And that could be judges, again, maple syrup, butter tarts, jams, cheese. I mean, the number of judges that we have for the cheese competition is huge. But we need to make sure that if you win at the Royal, then it means something. Otherwise, why are we doing this? We've increased prize money in all of our competitions, from the horse show to the livestock shows and even the food competitions. I mean, we, up until 5 years ago, we'd have what we call the Ring of Excellence, where we have these livestock competitions, but it wasn't our focal point. We redesigned our whole floor to make we're about those competitions and about the industry first. I mean, I think we keep going back to focus. What is our core element? And then we build the fun and stuff around that. Our core element is about agriculture. It's about being best in class. So let's take our floor plan and make our ring the center point. And from our standpoint, what was interesting, and again, having not been there, is the first conversations we had about it, they said, well, we can't move. I mean, as soon as you move one thing, as we all know, it has a ripple effect on the rest of the layout for the facility. Well, we can't make that change because that exhibitor has been in that same spot for 40 years. I said, so you're letting an exhibitor, not a sponsor, not a government partner, not somebody who's committed millions of dollars to the event, just because they're a legacy and they give us some money for that spot, he's dictating how we're running our entire floor because we can't move him? So that's not going to happen. Let's pick up the phone. Let's call him. Let's talk about what we're trying to do in terms of why we want to move him. We had a great conversation. He wasn't thrilled, but we eventually moved. Loves the new spot he's in. But it's our event. it's not going to get dictated by somebody who's just there for the 10 days, because
Right.
about the overall property in the experience. So, the investment that we have in those core elements needs to be consistent with our mission, our mandate, like I say, that brought us into being 100 years ago. If we discontinued supporting elements that were off brand and off strategy, like I say, the wine competition or other things, we got rid of them because we needed to focus. As we develop our plans to celebrate our 100th anniversary, it's going to be interesting because, as you said earlier, it's the history and heritage that we have, but it's also, for us, it's about the future. And that's going to be a core element. If you go back a few years ago, Maple Leaf Sport and Entertainment, when the Toronto Maple Leafs were celebrating their 100th anniversary, I think they were very smart that they had a logo that had 100 on one side and 001 on the other. And it was really celebrating, okay, this is a clear signal that this is the beginning of the next century also. This isn't just about looking back on what we've done for the last 100 years. So, from our standpoint, I think you're going to see a lot of changes as we move into our 100th. We'll be using our history and heritage to help move our brand forward. Like I said, we're certainly proud of our history, but we're not beholden to it. And I think that's what helps keep things fresh. We've got to be forward thinking. We've got to be innovative. We must provide consumers with relevant content, both in a physical sense and in a virtual sense. We must engage all of our key constituents, the exhibitors competing over the 200 competitions, our teachers, our students, government partners, sponsors, and the community at large. So, from our standpoint, it's an exciting time to be the Royal. There's a lot going on.
Now, how are you dealing with the pandemic right now, with all the new protocols, with everything that's happening? What's your take on what's happening in light of your centennial celebrations in 2022? I think it is, right?
It's 2022.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing, I mean, we're all facing it, both professionally and personally. I mean, it's a 2020 was not without its challenges, and 2021 is not going to be without its challenges. We are not going back to 2019. I mean, that was a great year. We had a great Royal, and I hope everyone else had a great festival and event that year, but we are not going back there. And I think in an effort to provide real and perceived security in knowing that the producers of large-scale events, that we're creating safe and secure environments, consumers, health officials, government partners, venues, our boards, are all going to impose new guidelines, restrictions, requirements, and mandates on our festivals and events. That's going to be the reality. I would say that festival events that fail to invest in this, and frankly, it's important that we not only invest in it, but that we communicate in it. If we don't, we're doomed to fail. The public will demand that of us. They simply have too many alternatives to not attend our events. They're going to be gun shy to begin with, let alone putting them in large crowds at our events. If we're not communicating to them all the safety procedures that we have in advance to make their experience of attending our events safe and secure, they're not going to attend, and we need to reinforce that once they're on site. I think for 2020, like all of us, we were shut down not of our own doing. We were shut down because of the pandemic, and we had two options. We really could either fold up, go sit in the corner, wait it out, lay off our staff, and see what happens. Or we started to be proactive about it and looked at opportunities to engage new audience, create new content, develop new connections. And we chose the second option. And that was not without some hesitation and trepidation by some of our board members and frankly, some of our staff, on going, okay, is this really worth the time and effort to pull this together? But we created what we call, excuse me, the Royal Agricultural Virtual Experience. And you'll notice we didn't call it the Royal Agricultural virtual or the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair virtual experience or the virtual Royal Agricultural Winter Fair. We called it the Royal Agricultural Virtual Experience. And this distinction was intentional because we weren't trying to create the experience of attending the Royal in a virtual platform. I mean, from our standpoint, how do we do that? How do we recreate the sights, the sounds, the smells from our standpoint of attending the Royal? I mean, you simply can't replicate that combination of butter tart, maple syrup, and manure that is the quintessential smell of the Royal. I mean, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But what we were able to do is take a lot of our webinars, our seminars, our workshops, and do them online. And in some cases, we increased our attendance tenfold.
Wow.
We didn't have, the idea of getting down to downtown Toronto for the Royal for some of these is a challenge. Now that we put it out on that platform, literally tenfold that we were able to increase the attendance on some of those, which was great. But then we had challenges, for example, like the horse show. How do we create a horse show? And we would be ranked right now the third highest ranked indoor horse show in the world. We're number one in North America. So we have some pretty high standards and expectations on how we deliver a horse show. And we looked at lots of different options, about, do we have people set out a course and they send in their video or any of those sorts of things. And every time we looked at it, it just didn't feel Royal worthy. It wasn't an experience that we thought was world class. But what we were able to do, which was really unique, is because of our stature with the FEI, which is the world governing body for equine sport, we reached out to them and said, you've got some clinics that you've already got as part of your library that you have, for your, if you sign up for it, you can access those. So we would like access to that just to put up as information and good content that viewers could watch. But the other thing too is we want access to some of the riders. And instead of doing a competition, we would like to do a fireside chat. So we literally set up, Mcleod Ward is a gold medalist in the Olympics, world champion, US champion. He's won at the Royal 8 times. So we had a conversation with Mcleod at his office for an hour. So he was in Florida. Our MC was in the UK. We were doing the back of house in Toronto, but people could sign up to then ask questions of Mcleod Ward. And it was really interesting to have him for an hour talk about his career, what the Royal meant, but even somebody asked him, because you could see a bunch of trophies around, and they asked him about his gold medals. And he said, oh no, they don't sit in my office. They sit in the barns because it was a team effort. So, when we have lunch with my whole team and all the grooms and everything, we have those in the barns. So it's not about me. So he's taken his medals and put them down in his barns for everybody to enjoy. Those kind of insights we thought were really, really interesting. We're having a conversation with Ian Miller. And Ian is a Canadian who holds the world record for the most Olympic Games ever participated in by any athlete in any field. He's been to 10 Olympic Games.
Wow.
And to have him talk about, those types of experiences, was really, really interesting. So we thought that those types of, a change from what the normal programming that we would be doing to something that was still really of value to our key constituents, being being that equine crowd, we gave them access to something that they normally wouldn't be able to have access to. So we had to change our programming. And I think when we look forward to our centennial, in 2021, you're going to see, like, we're going to relaunch the virtual experience this coming March. You're going to see that. You're going to see it again in June. And then we're going to do a complete relaunch of it in November to coincide with a physical fair. That's clearly we're using the pandemic to reposition our organization to be thinking about making appropriate connections throughout the year, not simply for the 10 days that we've always existed. As somebody once said, don't let a good crisis go to waste. So we're trying not to do that. And for the physical fair in 2021, I think you're going to see a lot more implementation of us using technology. So it will be, contactless admission, and maybe even cashless on the entire site. Tickets purchased online in advance and for specific times. Attendance capped at certain times through the day. On-site registration or linked to QR codes in order to facilitate contact tracing. We're going to have wider aisles to facilitate spacing of crowds. We're even looking at outdoor activities now that could include hay wagon rides, and barbecue or chili cook-off, bonfires and roasted marshmallows, hot apple cider, maybe even Santa and his reindeer, because we can tie in the animals to Santa. It's not just about Santa, it's about the reindeer, because most people don't even know what a reindeer looks like. So, those types of things, again, it doesn't stop us from doing what we're doing. We're just changing how we're executing a program. And I think that, we're all facing these unprecedented times. And as event managers, we need to be proactively embrace this reality and develop new strategies, new budgets, new operational plans accordingly. Because if we fail to do so, then I think that guarantees the demise of our festival or events.
Do you anticipate, so on that note, what do you anticipate doing? I know you talked about doing virtual while you're running the actual event. Yes. Yeah. So in November.
Yeah, but to be clear, it's going to be the elements that work in a virtual platform. So for us, we've had tremendous success with the workshops, seminars, and symposiums. We don't physically need to have those on site. Let's put them online. And so, we'll still get traffic and we deliver against that mandate, but that we're going to do online. We'll still execute a horse show, but now maybe what we do is in the evening or an afternoon, we could do a fireside chat because it was so popular, and give people, literally we had people from around the world, tuning into this. So we think, okay, let's build on that. We still want to do a horse show because that's what our mandate is, but there are going to be elements that are appropriate in a virtual space that we're going to do as a complement to this. I think the other thing that was important is our fair runs for 10 days. When we did the virtual experience, we did not try to fill the content for 10 days. We just thought it was just too massive. So are we better off doing, and we thought, 5 really good days where we've got an auditorium full of live keynote speakers every hour for 5 days. And that's what we focused on. And so we're using other days, March will be 2 or 3 days and June will be 2 or 3 days. Because if we're going to do it, let's do it right for the amount of time and the appropriate content that we have, not just trying to fill 10 days or 18 days or whatever it is that our event normally takes in a physical sense. We didn't think that was going to be the right model. And it worked.
And that's exciting too, because you can bring anybody in from all over the world and save on travel and accommodations,
Yeah.
right?
But what's interesting is some of the comments that we got from around the world where I've always wanted to come to Canada because you've got a beautiful country. Now I want to come in November, which frankly might not be the best time to come to see the whole country, but they want to come to Canada, but they want to attend the Royal. And we thought that that was really interesting from a tourism standpoint, that reach of people talking about us in different areas to be able to come back. So is it a long-term investment that we think it'll help drive the gate? Yeah, probably. But it's more about the overall brand than anything else. And we think we can deliver that. And that's a good value for the industry also.
Do you see sponsorship changing at all because of the pandemic?
What's interesting is, so for those that don't know, my background is not in agriculture and not in equine sport. I used to run the Honda Indy, and before that had my own sports marketing agency for 10 years before that. So sponsorship is very much in my wheelhouse. When I first joined, our director of sponsorship at the Royal, first year, was very proud of the fact that she claimed that we had 46 sponsors. And I said, okay, that's great. The Masters has 6. So who's doing a better job? It's not about the volume of having 46 sponsors. I could care less. It's, are we having fewer sponsors, but they're more engaged? And so we changed the whole sponsorship model, changed out staff. And I think the sponsorship, we lost 2 sponsors in 2020 because of the pandemic. And because they had outs in their contracts that they were allowed to leave because of a force majeure. They exercised that, but they exercised it because of a corporate mandate to get out of everything and anything. It wasn't us specifically. We still have a great relationship with them. They're talking about coming back in 2021, both of them. We did pare back what we were asking from sponsors because frankly, it was a different value proposition. To a T, everybody participated because they thought there was value there, and what we were asking was good value for the dollar we were asking. I think sponsors moving forward will be significantly more protective of their brand and where they're going to spend their dollars and how they're going to spend their dollars. I think there's that balance of, there's going to be this pent up demand to attend big events, so everybody's going to be rushing to go, is counterbalanced by the other half of the population and go, no, people are going to be hesitant to go to a live event. How do I ensure that I'm safe there? So I think until that starts to flesh out, that sponsors are going to be hesitant, not saying that they're not spending, but they're going to be critical on where they're spending and how they're spending.
Okay. And you mentioned a little bit about security. How do you see security changing?
And when you mean secure, when I say security, I mean like the entire, safety protocols that we're going to do. I think that's frankly going to be the biggest challenge moving forward is gaining that consumer confidence in our festivals and events, because clearly without the consumers, we don't have events, we don't have sponsors, we need people to attend these live events. And it's going to be the challenge of gaining consumer confidence that they are safe and secure at our events, that we have protocols in place. As I mentioned earlier, it's that, and we need to communicate that. It's not good enough just to say, say we put up 100 or hand washing stations. We've got to let people know that we've got hand washing stations on site. We've got wider aisles. We've got, whether masks are mandatory or not, who knows? And we're all still going to need to be following guidelines from our local health officials. But we need to communicate that moving forward and reinforce that communication once they're on site. We've got to create that for them. Otherwise, they're not going to attend.
What words of wisdom? So, like you said, there's challenges for us. What do you see as the biggest challenges for festivals and events in the future, and how, because you're a big iconic event, a big name, people who you talk to, like sponsorship, everything, know who you are. What advice do you have on that end for the smaller festivals who don't have those marketing dollars that you have, that who they know who you are?
Well, I think for so we have that advantage that typically we can get in the door, but on smaller scale events, there's also, what are your biggest assets? So it's we're a regional festival, and here's what we're doing in the heart of this region, because there are still marketing dollars that are spent on a regional basis versus a national or international basis on where we tap into dollars. I think it's communicating to sponsors, and I think this is where a lot of people make a mistake, is people want, pick a number, $100,000 from XYZ sponsor, because if we get $100,000 from them, we could do all this great programming for us. Okay, but you need to look at it from the sponsor's perspective and say, what are they getting out of this? What's the value for them? And if I'm going to, and I've done, 100 times done sponsorship evaluations, and if I'm going to recommend to a sponsor to spend $100,000 on the rights for a property, or it could be 10,000 or 1,000, it's the same model. But if I'm using $100,000 as an example, you better show me $400,000 or $500,000 worth of value. It's not just a straight one-to-one. I get what's in it for you as the event, but what's in it for me? My business is about, whether it's selling, cars or insurance or bank services or telco or whatever it is. That's their primary mission, is to drive their business. So how do we as events package ourselves that we've got access to consumers that would be interested? We got the right demographics, the right fit brand wise. What are those elements that we can really deliver value for sponsors? It's not just about us. We need to be looking at it, what's in it for them, because that's what they're going to be doing.
So that's at the bottom line, what's in it for them, whether you're a big iconic event or a small or local event.
Yeah. The idea of just tapping into the goodwill of a company that wants you to will write a check for $1,000, $10,000, or $100,000. They've got hundreds of applications that are going in. So we need to be saying to them, here's what I can do for you. And this is why this event is important in our community, and we need the support, and it's a community-based initiative. And here's the value that we're delivering back, whether it's in PR value, advertising, on-site, activation, employment, employee engagement. All of those elements have value to a sponsor.
And that's pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, right? That's 100%. During the same thing. Yeah, good. Yep. So we have a couple of questions here. One from Kyle. I'm not sure the in-person experience Charlie described, horse manure and butter tarts, would make a great scented candle, but it is a magical experience in person. I'm wondering if you feel the virtual experience you created and the broader audience you were able to reach will help the longevity for the Royal, even if it wasn't a replacement for the in-person experience.
Yeah, I agree with the candle sentiment, but it is amazing the number of people that walk in our doors and go, it smells like the Royal. And it just, so we kind of play that up a little bit. The virtual component will not replace the physical fair. That's our core, is we are about that live experience, as many of our festivals and events are. But it will continue to be a complementary component to it. It fits with our mandate, our mission, and we are going to use that as a tool moving forward to like I say, either create more awareness about the Royal, eventually drive more attendance through the gate, but deliver against our mission and mandate. And we had, like I said, some skeptics on our board. Skeptics, they just weren't sure. As we all, 2 years ago, very few of us knew exactly what a virtual experience was. We had heard about it, but weren't sure how to deliver it. Probably had never participated in it, and now we've all been to a million of them. But when we went through ours, it was interesting. Some of our harshest critics were saying, so we're doing this again. Yeah, we are. We're going to change a bunch of elements. We did a bunch of consumer surveys to see how things worked. We've got our own critique. We're probably our roughest critiques on ourselves. But we want to have this as a component moving forward. We think there is tremendous value for us as an organization, but also for the consumer. Whether you can attend the event or not, you can get knowledgeable, credible information through a virtual experience or on site. I mean, again, we keep playing up this, it's a good time to be the Royal, but when you hear about food, I mean, if you take, we're inundated with free range, free run, organic, non-GMO, you know, all these elements. I don't know what half of them mean. I can go to the Royal and talk to an egg producer and find out what the difference is between free range and free run. Oh, now I understand. You know, and we never want to position ourselves as we're telling you how to feed your family, but we do think it's important to get good, credible, reliable information so that you can make a judgment on how you want to feed your family from there. So can we do that in a combination of virtual and physical? Yeah, we think absolutely. That's going to be part of the future moving forward with our event.
Kelly said, what did she say? Maybe you can mail out scratch and sniff cards in advance. Okay, Gilbert has a question from Fan Expo. Has your theme tagline, Bring the Country to the City, changed now that you are focusing more on annual programming approach to RAWF? What do you see as the new theme as you turn a new page on your centennial?
No, I don't think, Gilbert, nice to see you. I don't think it's about changing our theme. Again, I'm going back to the intent of our focus. And our focus really is about bringing the country to the city. So everything that we do needs to be about that. But it's the delivery of that communication that is going to evolve. You know, the ability for us to use new technology, new communication tools, and be forward thinking still delivers against the original mandate that was set up 100 years ago. So it's really about the focus, not so much about the tagline. We think that is still valid. We are working on some scenarios for the 100th to celebrate that, because that obviously doesn't come around very often. And we think that's a really unique opportunity for us. But the whole farm to table, country comes to the city is really fitting a lot with what a lot of people are doing. I mean, even they talk about people moving out of Toronto to go to smaller towns. You know, there's a different experience there that you can have in the heart of Toronto that you can't get anywhere else if you're living here. So it becomes that balance for us.
Thank you. There doesn't seem to be any other questions. Is there any last minute words of wisdom you'd like to share with us, or?
Words of wisdom. I think that we are going to need to introduce, like I say, new technology, new programming, new initiatives to get us through for all of our events. I frankly think that we're going to be tested this year and for years to come, that our most ardent supporters of all of our festivals, and people have an emotional connection to our festivals and events. I mean, a lot of them have been doing it for years and years. And if we're not conveying the fact that they will, and being proactive in telling them they're going to be safe at our events, that we're going to protect their public safety, and that's a real concern to us. I think consumers are not going to attend as much as they've got an emotional connection to us. They'll want to, but they won't feel safe. So we've got to communicate that to them. I think we need to be bold and we need to refocus the value proposition of our events. You know, are we just an event that is just for fun, or are we actually are we delivering something that people are going to get real value out of? Did they learn something? Did they see something that they can't experience somewhere else? Those types of things, I think, are going to become more and more important, because there's going to be so much, there's the diversity of what we can experience as consumers. As organizers, I think we're going to have to cut costs or reallocate our resources to find money to deliver against the safety aspect. Is that going to force us to abandon some of the long-standing traditions of our events or the legacy programs because they no longer meet these new realities? Probably, but I'm not so sure that that's a bad thing. The ability for us to change well, we've always done it that way mindset. Now is the time to change that. I mean, we've got a list of a whole bunch of things that we're going through and saying, we've always wanted to change this. We're going to blame COVID, and it's not going to happen anymore because of COVID. Whether that's direct or indirect, I think the changing the mindset of we don't have to deliver our events the same way we've always delivered them. That we need to embrace these new opportunities. We need to create new content. We need to create new delivery mechanisms. Frankly, the world's changed. Expectations have changed. Priorities have changed. Communications has changed, and relationships has changed. So, as leaders and managers of some of the biggest and best festivals and events in the country, I think we've got two options, right? We either embrace and actively manage the change, or we perish. That's my 2 cents as we sit today. That may change with the next press conference that the Premier or the Prime Minister gives, or new information about vaccines, or the world changing. But as I sit right now today, that's how I'm feeling.
That's good closing. Thanks so much. Thank you so much, Charlie, for doing this with us and spending your time, your busy time at our summit, and sharing your great stories and your great insight into our world. So a quick reminder for the attendees that the next scheduled sessions will be on Thursday. There's nothing happening tomorrow. Thursday, February 11th, starting at 9 a.m. There will be 3 panel sessions, The Way We See It, Working Suppliers and Platform Developers, and one-on-one with the Honorable Lisa Mcleod. I'd like to also thank our sponsors, Ticket Pro, SmartServe, Event Hub, Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture, OLG, and Destination Ontario. Thank you so much. Somebody asked, is the Lisa Mcleod session an open forum? I don't know, Rebecca Cotter. We'll get back to you on that one. Probably I don't know. So Charlie, thank you. I'm trying to answer questions that I don't have the answers to. Hey, thank you, everyone. We will see you Thursday. Oh, Dave's here.
Yeah,
he can answer that.
It's going to be a format much like this. So I'll be moderating and asking questions through chat with Lisa Mcleod. We've sent her some questions in advance, but there will be the opportunity to ask through chat direct questions to Minister Mcleod.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dave. Thank you, everyone. Till Thursday. Bye, Charlie. Thanks.